This is Gail Kovac for Gresham Barlow School District. This is Summer School, High School Credit Recovery, Algebra 1A, and Learning Target number 9. I can convert standard form to slope-intercept form. So we just saw in Learning Target number 8 how you can, if your ultimate goal is to graph the line, just graph this by finding the x and the y intercepts. Maybe you're that person who really prefers graphing lines by using your y-intercept as the starting point and using your slope as instructions how to get to the next point instead. So either way you choose, we can actually rewrite this equation into that slope-intercept form if that's your preference. So what we want to do is get this to look like y equals all the y isolated all by itself on one side of the equal sign. So we can do that by just algebraically manipulating things and doing inverse operations to each side. So let's say I want to get my y equals all by itself. I'm going to go from the outside in. Let's get rid of this 6x and move that over to the other side. That's going to become the component for your slope right there. So I have 6x's. I'm going to take them away from this side. And I drew this line so that I'm fair to each side. And if I subtract 6x over here, I better subtract 6x over here as well. 6x take away 6x is no x's. They're all gone. So on the left, all that remains now is my negative 2y. And on the right, now we're not going to combine these. These are unlike terms. My 12 is a constant, and my negative 6x's are number of x's. So I'm going to keep those separate, and I'm going to write the x part first, negative 6x, and then that's a positive 12. So keep those separate. Do not actually combine them. All right, so now I want to get y by itself, but I've got a coefficient of negative 2. That implies multiplication, so I'm going to have to undo that by dividing each side by negative 2. Biggest mistake here is to add 2 to each side, but this is y times negative 2, not minus 2. So we will be doing that fairly to the left and to every single component on the right. I'm going to divide this piece by negative 2, and I'm going to divide this piece by negative 2. Multiply by negative 2 and divide by negative 2 are opposites and cancel. So let's see what we get left. Here, it's just going to be y. Here, I have negative 6x's divided by negative 2, and negative 6 divided by negative 2 is 3. So now I have 3x's. Then 12 divided by negative 2 is negative 6, so I'll have a negative 6. And that is the form that we want it in. Y equals your component of x and then your constant. So if anyone asked you, your slope would be positive 3 over, how do we turn this into a fraction? That would be over positive 1. So that's up 3 to the right 1. And where do you start? Your y-intercept would be at negative 6. That would be on the y-axis. So if you wanted to graph this, you would start at negative 6 on the y-axis. To get to the next point, you would go up 3 over 1. All right, let's try the next one. I'm going to do the same thing. I want to isolate y. I want to get y all by itself. So I need to get rid of the x component. I'll move that over, and then I'm going to need to get rid of that 4. So let's deal with the x part first. I have 2 x's here. I'm going to take them away from both sides because that will cancel out. And then we will be left with 4y equaling, remember not to combine these are unlike terms, and I'm going to write the x part first. So negative 2x, and that's a positive 8. All right, now to get rid of that coefficient of 4 in front of that y, multiplication is implied, so I'm going to divide by 4. And when you do it to the other side, you must be fair and do it to all of the pieces here, each term of the right-hand side. Times by 4 and divide by 4 are opposites and cancel. Let's see what we get on the other side now. Y will be equal to negative 2 divided by 4. You can actually just leave that if you want to, positive 4. x. You can also reduce it if you like. And then 8 divided by 4 is 2. That's positive 2. So your slope is going to be negative 2 over positive 4. And you can reduce that if you want. You can divide top and bottom by 2, and you'll get negative 1 over positive 2. And your y-intercept, your starting point when you graph this, would be at, there's your constant of 2. Let me circle this. It's getting a little lost in all the algebra up there. So to graph this one, you would start at 2 on your vertical y-axis, and then to get to the next point, you could go down 2 and to the right 4, or you could just simply go down 1 and to the right 2. So solving these ones, make sure you isolate the variable of y. Don't add unlike terms here. Make sure you keep those separate. Then you can identify your slope and your y-intercept.